Hello and welcome to the Recovery Matters podcast from CCAR, the podcast where putting recovery first is always the goal. Here we present interviews, discussions, stories, and speeches to cultivate the understanding and acceptance of the power, hope, and healing of recovery from alcohol and other addictions. Here are your hosts, Phil and Sandy Valentine.
I know the story. When did the drinking start? And why do you think it started, or what happened?
The drinking started probably 5 years ago, I would say. We dealt with a lot of stuff with my daughter had her own issues.
Yeah.
And that was not easy on both Cheryl and I. And at that point, I had her therapist say, you realize this is all your fault.
She said that to you?
Yeah.
Or the therapist said that to you?
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't, but so to hear that from somebody, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, but it was...
that's cruel.
Yeah, it wasn't good. And that's really what set me off the deep end in terms of just depression and my own feelings of, now, looking back at it now, and like I said, what I've learned through the therapy I've gone through and through recovery is, all the stuff that really stems from, childhood and, the feelings of not being worthy and, being a monster. So started drinking then, but it started by only I would have a drink a night. I'd get home from work and I'd have a drink. Why not? There's a lot of people that do that. Well, the one drink, and it was never beer. Like, I was never been a beer drinker. It was always whiskey or tequila or sometimes a good rum. But I would have a drink, and then that drink kept getting bigger and bigger. And, from like a normal rocks glass, a normal like single or double pour to, I was drinking a lot. But and like with anything in my life, it progressed very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It was
overachiever.
It was my now obsession where, except this time it was more so, and it started really with trying to close my mind down at the end of the night, and just so I could sleep. And I just didn't want to have to deal with it anymore. So it was a way to turn things off. And of course, the longer I went on, the more I had to drink. And, within a year, I was drinking well over a bottle a day of, typically at that point, whiskey or tequila.
But you're still functioning. You're running.
Yeah, it was never.
Your business is growing.
That's the weird part about it. Yeah, during this whole part, we're getting all kinds of awards, and but at the end of the day, none of it meant anything.
Right.
I had the city name a day after me. I've gotten all kinds of. And that's part of how we just want to treat people and do our business, but. We've always tried to support the community and support people that need it, and we do a lot with second chance initiatives, and so we've gotten lots and lots of rewards and accolades, and best barbecue awards, and it'd feel good for a minute, but then you're on to the next. Okay, well, that wasn't good enough. I could have done this better, or you're always pushing yourself, and I've always been my own worst judge. But none of the awards meant anything, and during this time, like I said, we're still dealing with my daughter's issues and my own issues, and during that time is when I first started really addressing my own bulimia, and getting that at least stopping. I wouldn't say recovered, but stopping the behavior. Kind of the eating disorder of being a dry drunk. And I still struggle, I'd say, with like body image issues and stuff like that. But it's, at least for me, it's more so now. With any of it, I think it's really about being mindful and really just kind of learning, okay, where's that thought train going, and derailing it or, cutting it
Right.
off.
So you've mentioned body image a few times, and when we look at you, you would seem like the last guy that would have body image issues. So what is it you see, and how do you think you?
It's like growing up. I say it's similar to, when you talk about eating disorders and body image and stuff like that, it's typically around girls, and how there's an unrealistic expectation for girls to all be Barbies,
Right.
Or whatever the latest ideal is, because it's always changing. Well, I would argue that it's the same for guys. For me growing up, it was always, I wanted to be like Arnold, or I wanted to be like Frank Zane. You don't realize it when you're a child, or like, back then also like Hulk Hogan,
Yeah.
or like any of the wrestlers,
Yeah.
But what you don't realize as a child is that's not real.
Right.
That's not it's not natural. You can't be like that unless you're on a lot of different supplements, I'll call them.
Yeah, supplements.
Which, hey, and I've never had a problem with bodybuilders. If you're willing to pay that price to achieve that goal, then so be it. I never was. But so you see, like, and when I'm not deluding myself, I'll say, or having what I call just delusional thoughts, I know I'm in better shape than 90% of the people out there. But
and in
that's
case
not what
in case you haven't looked in a mirror, you're kind of handsome. Phil knows this, so this is not coming as a surprise for him that I think you're handsome.
But you just don't think of it though. I don't think I think of it as, well, I don't look like Arnold, or I don't look like
He's not that
I'm
cute.
not ripped up. Well, I'm not like
Arnold's old.
I'm not like 5% body fat.
Yeah.
I don't have like ripped abs, and it's like, well, I should. There's no reason why I shouldn't. You don't, because you're freaking weak-willed and you eat too much. So then you just beat yourself up. Yes.
That's what you tell yourself.
Exactly. And so where we're going with this?
Well, this is all tying into your
the
drinking and your business still going and still achieving in some areas.
The drinking never really affected business, because even when I was drinking a lot, like so I started out a glass a night, and then it progressed to where there towards the end, I would say the last at least 9 months, I only drank for about a total of maybe 2.5 years.
Which is so.
I went from nothing to
2.5 years to
being in recovery, where I was going to kill myself. I would go to work, and I'd say for the last at least 6 months.
You're building out Hartford at this time, I think, right? Or were you?
No, at this point, everything's already all built out.
Oh, okay.
It might have been towards the tail end of when we were building out Hartford is when it started.
Yeah.
But it was more so like we had Chango going, and so I'd sit at the bar at Chango, and it's usually where you could find me with. Then when I got Bernie would just be sitting under my chair, and
Bernie the dog,
Bernie, my German Shepherd.
Yeah.
Which he's probably the reason why I'm alive today. Which I'll get to that in a minute. But I would sit there, and there towards the end, I would get to work around lunchtime-ish, because it was okay to drink starting at lunch, at least for me, because I'm the boss. And I would sit down, and the bartenders all knew what I liked, and they wouldn't make me a normal cocktail or a normal drink. It was basically like a quadruple. It wasn't even a double.
Wow.
And I would drink probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those between then and early or late afternoon, early evening. And then I would.
You're still talking and functioning pretty normal?
That's what's so weird is, so like
your tolerance is off the charts then.
Yeah, and my body's always
a late starter.
Yeah, my body's always kind of just process things very quickly. So yeah, I mean, I would never get like sloppy or anything like that. I would sit there and I would do my work on my computer and just drink. Because I knew I had to get a head start. Because if I didn't start then, by the time I get home, I'd be having to chug bottles.
Ugh.
But I wouldn't go home without a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Unless if I knew. Well, during this time also, my wife and I separated, my ex and I. So I was living on my own, which made it even worse because there was no accountability at all.
Right.
I mean, if you went into my apartment at that time, I was living downtown, you would see, I had some food, not really a lot, but I probably had at any given time a dozen different bourbon bottles. And, so the nice thing about owning a restaurant is you also have access to liquor distributors and you can order whatever you want.
Oh, yeah.
And it was never bad. It was always high-end stuff. It was always,
I know.
when I look back, and in fact, there's an app where you can plug in like your average, I forget what the app's called, but it's a recovery app where you can plug in like what was your average spending per day and how much time did you spend per day drinking. And I mean, the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars I've saved over the last 2 years is just incredible. But I would sit there and drink all day. And then, like I said, if I knew I didn't have anything, if I didn't at least have a full bottle at home, I would take a to-go bottle. And, but then it got to the point where that was becoming daily. And I knew that what I was doing wasn't necessarily great. And I didn't want my staff to know I was drinking that much. So then I would just stop at a liquor store. But then I would switch up liquor stores too, because I mean, you can't be going to a liquor store every goddamn day buying a bottle.
Yeah, you don't want the
That's not acceptable.
The owner to know you were drinking. No. Oh my God!
It's just but how your mind works when you're in that. It's really
there.
when I think back about some of the stuff, just my thought processes were insane.
Yeah,
it's really insane.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got to the point where that wasn't enough either. So then I started taking Ambien and Seroquel and drinking with it because that was the only way where at night I could sleep at all. And it just, and now looking back at it, and I didn't realize at the time, was just how much drinking like that makes your depression worse.
Yeah.
And it quickly spiraled down into what I call it. I told you, it was like I was living just in a black hole, like at the bottom of a black hole where there was nothing good. Like I said, I could get whatever accolades and awards, and it never meant anything. I just felt like, you feel like at that point, I really felt like a horrible person. Like, and so I kept on trying to, you do these things to try to prove that you're not,
right,
that you are worthy, that you are, see, I did good things. I did this, I did that. And, people didn't really necessarily see that, I'd have people, oh, it's always sunny in bear country. So you have to go to work and, you have to put on, or you're going to speak in public or you're going to accept an award. And, of course you have to be smiley and talk and wear your outside mask, I'll say. But then at home, I'd be sitting in my, I eventually moved over to West Hartford and I'd be sitting in the basement there and I would drink until I passed out. And like I said, it was weird. I would never get sloppy drunk. I would go from drinking to I was out. And like I said, eventually that wouldn't work. So then I would start taking Ambien with it, which is, I didn't realize, I probably knew it. I know I knew it at the time, but I ignored the fact that I knew that was dangerous. But then even Ambien stopped working. So then I started taking Seroquel with it. And I don't know if you know about Seroquel, but that's horrible. Seroquel by itself will turn you into a zombie. But yeah, so there towards the end, I was drinking almost from the time I wake up till the time I passed out at night. I was drinking. It had to be for at least 6 months, some level of intoxicated 24/7.
Yeah. And then that fateful time.
Yeah, and then I found myself there towards the very end. And like I said, the depression just kept on getting worse and worse and worse. And started having, suicidal thoughts. And ended up one night, I have guns and sitting in the basement. And there had been a lot of times where I would be drinking. I'd just have my guns out, sitting next to me or whatever. No real reason, but... The more I thought about it, and then one night I stuck it in my mouth and was a hair away from pulling the trigger. I was done. I was nothing was ever going to be better. Like I said, it's like you're living in a black hole and you just don't see any way out or any, you know, there. I think it'd just be better if it was over. But in my insane mind, the only reason I didn't do it was because of Bernie. I thought, you know what, I'm going to shoot myself. Nobody really knew where I lived.
Right.
And because of that, nobody's going to find me. And Bernie's going to end up fucking eating me. He's going to end up eating me, damn it. And that's the only reason why I didn't. But luckily, when I woke up the next morning, that's when I realized I called my ex. I said, I have to go for help. You know,
was it even amazing you knew where to go? Or
well, and then like anything else, I obsessively over the next couple of days researched, and again, luckily for me, I have enough money where I could afford to go to any recovery center I wanted in the world.
And you did.
And I did. I went to Bali, a place called the Lighthouse. I researched all kinds of. I researched like all like the high end places, and even at that point, I wasn't looking for an addiction recovery center or a rehab. I was looking for something around, because I wasn't an alcoholic.
Right.
I didn't have a problem drinking. I had mental health issues.
Yeah.
Is what I told myself. You know, so it was, and I didn't want to. There was no way I was admitting that I was an alcoholic either, because I had alcoholics and drug addicts in my family growing up, and that's not me. I know that's no way in hell that's me. You know, alcoholic's somebody that's laying in the gutter, or that's, you know, getting DUIs or, you know, whatever. So I said I researched pretty much everywhere. And I knew that I needed somewhere that was more one-on-one. You know, I know I'm smart enough to where, and that's always been my problem with therapy and stuff, is I'm smart enough to where I know what I need to tell them and how to play the game. And I knew if I was in a big group setting that I'd be able to just finagle my way out, you know, just play the game. And I didn't trust myself to put in the effort needed. So found this place in Bali, and it's really one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Went away February 26th is my sober date, and really never looked back. I jumped right in. I mean, just like anything else in my life, I jumped right in it full tilt. You know, if I was going to be sober, I'm going to be the best person in recovery in the world.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do all my homework. I'm going to do all my studying. I'm going to, you know, it's just, but really, you know, and one of the reasons I picked Bali was because, especially there, they did a lot of community service as part of their stuff. And they integrated a lot of, what I'll just say, like alternate or Eastern philosophies in their recovery also. So there was a lot of focus on meditation. And
so when I think about what you just said, that you were in this dark place with a gun in your mouth, but over the next 2 days, somehow you were rational enough to do research and still know what you wanted in a center.
Well, I think I was scared.
How does that work?
I think I was terrified. I knew that I didn't want to die.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that, you know, rationally I knew it. And I knew that if I didn't get help, I would be dead. That the next time I would either kill myself or I would move on to
something else.
I'll just say harder drugs.
Yeah.
You know, because like I said, the Seroquel and the Ambien and the drinking, it just wasn't cutting anymore.
Yeah.
I would literally go to bed with a glass next to me, a glass of whiskey next to me. And then when I would wake up in the middle of the night, I'd fucking drink it just because I needed to sleep. Yeah. So I was literally drinking 24/7. But went there, and it was odd, you know, especially at first. You'd think, God, I don't belong in a place like this. Or, luckily for me, and like I said, I knew myself well enough that I knew I needed to be somewhere very individualized. So, and at that place, you have your own little villa where you have a recovery coach, I'll call them, stay with you 24/7. You know, especially at first, they make sure that you're doing, you know, that you're going to your meetings, that you're doing all the work that you need to do, that you're just being safe. Because there, it wasn't just for alcohol, it was, you know, everything. So a lot of.
So what did you discover there? What did you discover?
Oh, a lot. Like I said, there it was really a big focus on, like I said, meditation and yoga, mindfulness, breath work. Did a lot of therapy, and of course, like I said, being me, they had their standard schedule. Like, okay, this is in a given week, we want you to go to 2 yoga classes and 2 therapy sessions, and at
So
least
you did 10.
a meeting a day.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, no, I'm here to get better. I'm not here to relax. I'm not here to have fun. I'm here to fix whatever the hell's wrong with me. So I had them from the time I'd wake up in the morning till the time I went to bed. My schedule was full every day, but it also worked. So, and just learning you did a lot of trauma work. And I think, and I still believe to this day that at least for me, and the type of, I'll call the addiction I had and the reasons I had the addiction was trauma based. And I think a lot of people, it's based out of some kind of trauma. And I still think that on some level, addiction can be recovered, or can be healed if you can heal completely from your trauma, which is very, very hard.
Oh, yeah.
But the more you heal from your trauma, the less likely you are going to be to relapse. And typically, and I'm very new at this, but from what I've seen, the people that have relapsed in my life haven't dealt with the true underlying factors of why they are addicts, whether it's drug addict or alcohol or gambling or anything else, because you're trying to fill that hole in your mind that was left by the trauma. And so a lot of the work we did was based on, one of the things I really enjoyed was TRE, trauma release exercise. I don't know if you've done any of that. It's pretty incredible. It's really nothing other than it was developed for ex-military people with PTSD.
Yeah.
And it's really it's a series of movements that releases the anxiety from your body. They found it studying like antelope or like mammals in general, because mammals, like most mammals other than people, like people take your trauma and internalize it, and it gets latched into your brain. Animals don't have, like other mammals don't have that ability. So what they saw was, like, say, like you see an antelope get chased by a lion and escape, but what they would see is the antelope would fall on the ground, shake for a minute, get up and go along its merry way. It's not holding on to that trauma.
Wow.
And what they found was that people can mimic that release of that anxiety release, and it really does work. You do one session, like for me, I could do, and what I liked is they taught it so that I could do it on my own.
Yeah.
And you could do one session, and it's really just, like I said, you're just moving your body in a little bit different ways, and focusing on your breathing, and
just like that saying.
You feel like it's all gone.
It's like this,
you feel
shake it off,
relaxed.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
In a sense, like
exactly.
Shake it off, right?
So there was that,
Wow.
and there was different. We did different types of trauma therapy, and I was there for 3 months, and really about being mindful. And I was talking to somebody. Somebody the other day about. They made a comment about, I'm just going to stop trying to be a good person because I'm just so sick of, it's not, you try to treat people well and they just turn around and disappoint you, or treat you however they're going to. I said, well, so that's one thing I still struggle with. I really try to work on is, not setting expectations. So be a good person, do good things, treat people how you want to treat them, which hopefully you want to treat them well, but don't attach expectations onto those actions. And then that way, if they do reciprocate and treat you well, hey, that's great. But if not, it's no sweat off your back.
Right.
You did it because you wanted to do it, and there was no expectation of reciprocation. And that way you don't. And so there's just a bunch of little things, and really just, I think a lot of it is just being mindful and being in the moment, and really appreciating what you got, and not and accepting things for the way they are.
Sure.
You know, it's one thing, like my coach, like anytime I would say, I wish this, or I wish that, or, you know, so that just needs to go out of your vocabulary. You just need, when you say stuff like that, you're not accepting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're wanting things to be different. You have to accept things the way they are. And not to say like you just accept and roll over bad things,
Mm-hmm.
but there's stuff in your life that you can't, you know, it's the serenity prayer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's things in your life that you can't change, and you can fight them all you want, but you're pretty much, you're hitting your head against the wall. You know, and who's that going to hurt?
Right.
So just accept,
Mm.
which is still a struggle. Like I'll catch myself, especially I've caught myself a few times in the last few months, especially as things get more stressful at work, or, you know, you find yourself, at least for me, like backslipping and, you know, not accepting. And that's when I know I need to kind of refocus. And
Yeah. How do you take care of your recovery today?
Photography's helped a lot.
Sure.
Um,
That's like, so
I've really
talk
enjoyed
about diving into photography and this world you're
Yeah, I've always liked diving. I've done it for
Yeah.
years, but when I was in Bali, I started diving again, and just remembered, and it was just like little things like that. Like they reminded you, just, you know, that there was a bunch of stuff in the world that you really love.
Mhm.
yes.
You know, whether it was the diving, or we'd go for hikes, or just being outdoors in general. I think
Yes.
I think everybody should have to be outdoors a good portion of their week.
Mhm.
You know, at least go for a walk a day, or, you know, I find like even just taking the dogs for a walk in the woods
Mm-hmm.
for 30 minutes a day makes a big difference. You know, just to allow your mind
Mm-hmm.
to reset and kind of decompress. But in Bali, I started diving again, and just like with anything, full tilt.
Yes.
Before I left, I had all my gear back again, and at that point, I started becoming interested in taking underwater pictures. I've always liked photography. I did a little bit in high school, but then,
Mm-hmm.
just like anything in my life, it just went by the wayside after I lost interest in it. But started taking pictures, and again, really just, it was my latest obsession. But the good thing about photography is it can always be better, you know, and there's always new subjects so it's the get bored level I haven't reached it yet, or I'll reach it, and then you find something new to take pictures of, or some different technique to try to master.
Yeah, so one of the pictures we've seen the marlin and the bait ball resonates with me. You're freaking nuts being in the water at night taking pictures of sharks. But then I also see you kind of said, well, maybe I'll go take some pictures of owls.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is like, what?
Now let's go back to the sharks for a minute. Like,
Okay.
what is
Sharks
that
are fun.
feeling in your body when you're in the water with them? And you don't seem that far away, although I know cameras.
He's not far away.
Oh no, they're like, because those are wide angle
Yeah.
lenses. So typically, like most of those pictures, they're like within like a foot, sometimes closer.
Mhm.
Like they'll hit the front of my
What's
camera.
that anxiety releasing thing? Because I haven't. Perhaps I'm just thinking about it.
What you realize, and what, especially like there's like whole groups of people out there that are trying to educate the public on sharks, is that they're really not interested in you. They're not interested in eating you. You're not a food item to them. They might be curious, but for the most part, they're not interested in biting you. And typically, when there are attacks, the common theme is the person was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mhm.
You know, like there was, I think it was last year or the year before, there was a person attacked by a great white out off Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's because the person was wearing a wetsuit and swimming out by where all the sea lions were, or the seals were.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, the shark was in the water, and so that looks kind of like a seal to me.
Mhm.
But what you'll also always see is typically, let's just say typically, a shark will bite somebody and then release and go swim off because it realizes, oh, well, that wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
Tastes
That
like
tastes
a dirty
weird.
person.
It tastes weird.
But for the most part, I mean, it's like anything. Like when you first jump in, and no matter if was my first time or the last time, there's always at first until you really acclimate, you get situated. It's a little exciting, especially for the bigger sharks. But I also go with people that really know what they're doing, that have been doing it for years. And then the more you educate, it's just like anything else. The more you educate yourself on something, the less unknown there is, and you realize there's not a lot to be scared of if you do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
What do you want to photograph next? I'm sure you've thought about that.
There's a couple trips that I have in mind. I would like to do some more land-based stuff. So there's a couple tours, a couple guides that are that are based out of Russia that do like the snow leopards and tigers and yeah.
You want to get a snow leopard?
I would like to.
Wow.
And really, for me, it's about sharing, and like for any of my pictures, it's really just about sharing it with people.
Yeah.
Especially, and that's what I really like about because like the land-based stuff, everybody has seen a picture of a snow leopard or seen them in a unfortunately seen them in a zoo, which I don't really like zoos, but
no, they're very hard to see in the wild.
They're very rare.
Yeah, but you see
they're
the
very
pictures.
secretive too.
Yeah.
So, and then there's polar bears. I want to do the polar bears up in Churchill, Canada, which is way up north, like on the St. Lawrence.
If I was going, you know where I would go? I want to do grizzly bears. I would love to do grizzly bears.
Yeah, grizzly bears on the list up in Alaska.
Yeah.
And also the spirit bears.
When we went on safari, I think you probably saw some of that with our daughter. So we're still Facebook friends with our guides. So if you ever decide to go on safari.
I definitely want to do the safari somehow. There's all kinds of crazy animals I want to take pictures of in Africa.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, I've said this before, but that's the last place in the world I ever wanted to go and the last thing I ever wanted to do. And I cannot imagine that I would have lived my life without the experience.
And that's the thing is there's so much cool stuff to do, and that's what you realize in recovery, and what wouldn't have been possible without recovery is. So without recovery, I'd probably be dead by now. I would have either killed myself or I would have
taken a lethal combination of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was always, like I said, I push. And
do you still push today?
Oh yeah.
Do you think it's tempered at all? Or have you rechanneled it?
Yeah, because I learned to watch it, like even like with like weightlifting. Like I go to the gym probably 4 days a week, which before that wouldn't have been acceptable.
Yeah, how could you just do 4?
and I allow myself, I'll just say a little grace, and that I am getting a little older, so I can't lift as much as I used to, as far as like my joints just can't handle it anymore. But no, I still definitely get obsessed. Like my latest obsession is sailing. Yeah. Yeah. So Marissa, who's my my girlfriend, her and I went for our first sailing lessons about a month ago, and yeah, especially because I love water, and I was like, if I get a catamaran, we just go sail all over the place and live the life. So that's been my latest one. So I went down to the boat show last week in Annapolis.
What size catamaran are you talking about?
Like a 45 to 50 foot. So, but the problem right now.
It's not one of the ones you just throw on the back of the tow.
No, big one. One that you can live on.
Yeah.
But the problem right now is just like everything else is there's, like I went down to this boat show. Supply. They're like, it's like 2025 before you can get a boat.
Supply.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, well, that's like 5 years from now. I'm not. Who knows what I'm going to be obsessed with then? When I want a boat of fires.
I know.
That's way too far.
But that's great to know, right?
Like,
yeah.
And you're embracing it and directing it towards healthier.
Yeah, exactly. And there's worse things to be. I know I need to be able to push myself in some manner. And there's still the business, and we're still trying to grow that. So we're building the spots down in North Carolina, and like we were just talking about before, we just closed down Blind Pig. So there's still a lot to do with work. But then just the photography, I really like the photography. But even that, like I have to learn, you don't always have to have the latest and greatest camera. Like Sony just came out with a new camera. It's like, oh, your camera's perfectly fine.
Right.
You know, you're not, your pictures are not being held back by your camera. It's your lack of skill.
Right. There you go.
Which is just practice and taking classes. So like I've done a couple, like, you know, I'm constantly, in my free time, like I watch YouTube videos on editing, and a lot of the, especially for photography, a lot of it comes down to the editing. You can take a pretty bad picture, and if you edit it properly, it makes a huge difference. So just learning different editing styles, but yeah, I want to just continue traveling and hopefully helping people.
How do you describe yourself today? Because you've always said you wanted to be seen in a certain way, but who is Jaime McDonald today? Who are you? And I know that might, but who are you?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do. I'm going to push you to answer that. Who are you?
Who am I? I don't know. Just somebody trying to do better in the world. You know, I want to leave the world a better place than when I got here. And you know, and I think at least hopefully people evolve as they live and they grow. You know, there was times in my life when that was all about money. Mm-hmm. You know, the more money you had, the more successful you are, the better person you are. That's not true at all.
Okay. as
we can see by some of our super rich billionaires in the world. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily good people.
All right.
And at the end of the day, yeah, having some money's nice. And like I said, I've been lucky enough to where the businesses are doing pretty well. Mm-hmm. And I could travel some, but it's really about, you know, making a difference in whether it's the community or even individuals' lives. You know, there's, you know, a friend of mine just passed a few months back. He'd been battling cancer since he was a child, and he was only 21. But you know, taking the time to take pictures last fall.
Remember that?
You know, and you know, as somebody that's healthy, you don't really think of it as a huge deal. Mm-hmm. You know, I knew it would be nice for him and stuff like that, but like, come to find out, you know, talking to his parents, especially after he passed, how important that day was to him and how much of a difference it made to him and how much he enjoyed it. And they talked about it, you know, for the next year. And so just like that, like I said, just taking the time to try to make a difference in people's lives.
You know, Phil started early on with CCAR. The message was putting a face on recovery, because 22 plus years ago, you know, it was all in church basements. You didn't see anybody shining a light on recovery. And I really appreciate how quickly you put yourself out. Successful business owner, incredible reputation, and you put your recovery out there, and for mental health as well.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it's important in general for the recovery community to be. It's just you know, like we talk about with like mental health, you know, the stigma around recovery, or you know, like I said, you know, growing up, you think of an alcoholic or an addict as a scumbag. You know, that's just somebody that's fucking weak and you know, just can't handle their lives. And you know, even up until, like I said, until the point where I went to my first meeting in Bali, no way in hell I was an addict. You know, what the hell are you talking about? Right. I just have mental issues. Yeah. But that just goes to show you just how much of a stigma there is around it. And so that was part of my own recovery, is just figuring out, you know, I knew that I had to be open in order to make it lasting. That if I felt shame around it, or really it's the shame, that it wouldn't last. Because that was part of my trauma to begin with, is always feeling bad about myself. So now if I thought, you know, that, yeah, here I am, I'm a scumbag, alcoholic, and, you know, whatever. But being open about it. And it's really surprising over the last couple of years, since I have gone into recovery, how many people have reached out. especially just through, I just, I do my posts and stuff occasionally, and, thank you for posting this today. I really needed this, or, thank you for being so forward with your own recovery and stuff. It's helped me, and if I could just keep doing that, it's nice to know that it does have a positive effect on me. If it does help somebody get through the day or go into recovery or continue their own recovery or go back into recovery or whatever stage they're at in their own lives or their own mental health or, reaching out. I still think that mental health is it's such a huge issue. There's people, you hear about people every week, whether in your own circles or extended circles, that, committing suicide and, losing that battle. And we've had, the rash of, seems like more so lately versus before, but maybe I just wasn't aware of it before. But especially over the last few years, about like just famous people, whether committing suicide or overdosing, all the opioid deaths out there, and it's all related. It's all, to me, it's all related. It's all, you're an addict because your mental health issues, and if it could, like I said, I think that solving one definitely helps solve the other, or helping one helps the other. But I think people really have seen, especially like with Robin Williams or with Anthony Bourdain, here are people that really had the world by the balls. They're rich, they're famous, they are loved, but even them, it's not enough. And that's what I try to tell people is, not to say I'm super rich or famous or anything, but from outward appearances, I have a good life. I have a successful business, I have spending money, I have 2 great kids, I have way too many great dogs. And you wouldn't think that there's anything to be depressed about, or what's wrong with that person? They have everything, You realize that, like I said, even like the words, all that stuff, like when you're in that struggle, it means absolutely nothing. In fact, I think it makes it worse, because then, as a person in that situation, you think the same way. I don't deserve to be able to feel like this. What do I have to feel bad about? I have money, I have fame, I have blah, blah, blah.
What would you say to people that feel that way? What would have helped you, or what would you say?
I don't know. I think it's cumulative. I think that it just has to keep being put out there that it's okay to feel that way. That
get help.
Get help. That it doesn't matter.
You're not
your
alone.
Worldly possessions aren't. Don't disqualify you from having mental health issues. And like I said, if anything, that served to isolate me even worse, because I couldn't admit it to my staff. I couldn't admit it to my family. Even with my family, I'm the successful one. I'm supposed to be now the one. Growing up, I was the black sheep. I was always the one in trouble. I was the troublemaker and all that. And now that I turned my kind of obsessions to business and whatever, now I'm the successful one. So, what right do I have to be depressed or suicidal or addicted or anything like that? So it just helped, like I said, isolate you even more. So my message to people is just, you're not alone.
Great.
Everybody deserves to be happy. And,
enjoy life.
Yeah.
One of the
there's a lot to enjoy.
Observations I like to make, you talk a lot about, Sandy, I might ask you this as we start to wrap up too, is what you see. I mean, I asked you who are you today? And not just looking from the outside and our conversations over the years here and there. I don't, the obsession is, you could shift that word to passion. That you become passionate about it. Only when you cross the line when it becomes obsession. But the part is that I really want to talk to you about, or that I've observed, is adventure. you know, in my, like you, the Instagram post, you have your profile and you get a few words only to describe who you are. And I like to put, you know, that I'm an adventurer. And your adventures are inspiring because you take it to a whole new level. I'm gonna go diving somewhere in the faraway place and lands and
In the dark.
do these like things that are courageous to me, you know. And so you're a man of courage, you're a man of adventure. You care about the people near you. You want to make a difference in the world. These are all remarkable, admirable qualities, and you're also willing to share your experience to help others. Have you seen things like that? Is there anything else?
Well, you know, that some of the folks that were in the room that day at UConn when you came and shared your story with them, it was just a, you know, I think maybe 10 students. They're still talking about it
Mm-hmm.
because many of the students that I work with do come from having a lot.
Mm-hmm.
These are not students who are struggling in poverty and things like that, and it still hasn't filled them up. So being able to see somebody and relate to them like you was super powerful. And they surprised me by bringing it up because, again, it was 2 years ago, right? But we never know what words we choose to use, like that they have any lasting impact, and sometimes we'll never know.
Oh yeah, like so, yeah, a lot of times you just hope that it does, and
Well,
hope that somebody hears. And
yeah, well, the big piece too that is you can look at all these successful people, and you've indicated that a lot of your need to achieve was kind of to compensate for the trauma you suffered as a child. And that message, when you look out at people who are what we in this culture might think are thriving, might be thriving for all for a reason that's really detrimental. That's kind of killing
Could be.
them inside too. You
Yeah,
just
some
never
people.
know.
Yeah,
You
that's
never
the thing
know.
is you don't ever know. And, that's one of the things that you have to really that I've really tried to focus on in recovery is, you know, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
There's a reason that's a saying is, you know,
Mhm.
and it's on both ends. Just because somebody's successful does not mean that they have their
Mhm.
life together or that they're happy, and vice versa. You could have somebody living in poverty
Yeah.
or even homeless and be happier than that person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And like I say, it has nothing to do with happiness. And you know, the whole cliche that money can't buy you happiness.
Mm-hmm.
It really can't. It has nothing to do with your happiness.
Right.
It could buy you some cool stuff and have you
Maybe take you
take some
to
great trips,
Oh,
but
yeah, exactly.
it's not going to make you happy. It's
No.
not. That's the one. That's the one key thing. One of the key things I've learned is your happiness has to come from within yourself. And
Right.
if you're not happy with yourself, then no matter what you do, no matter what you achieve, no matter what you accumulate, you'll never be happy.
When I think about all these, the amount of money has no impact on how you perceive an adventure. So I think like, you know, I'm going to take the dog for a walk in the woods. This could be an adventure. And you see an owl in a tree or just the way the leaves are. It's all out there. It's all inspiring. You take a trip on the beach. That's an adventure. When the kids were little, we'd be on the beach and they'd be stirring, let's go on an adventure. And what would the adventure be? It would be a
Going
walk
out to those little rocks.
Yeah, 200 yards down the beach.
Exactly.
But it's all how you approach it. And that's what I see when these are, you know, you think about even your catamaran, right? You're sailing around. What, I mean, hop on a catamaran and sail somewhere, like far, like a few hundred miles or something. What an adventure. How cool is that?
I want to eventually go around the world.
Yeah. Go around the world?
Yeah.
You do,
Yeah.
on the catamaran.
Of course, because
Well, that,
Why not?
You can't sail it to the moon, so we'll just go around the world.
No, that's another thing. And that's the way. And this is something I've always thought is you can't let fear
Right.
control your life.
And
There's
that
so much stuff out there.
And you just hit the key of like why? Because the trauma produced what when you were a kid? Fear.
Yeah.
And now you're saying, I mean, you're just saying, F you. I'm not going to let what you did to me. I'm not going to let that fear ruin my life. And you've been saying that your entire life. now much in a much more healthier way.
Yeah, and it's
Just
not to
Yeah.
let. Some fear is good,
Right.
because it teaches you you're not going to be
Do you ever see Free
irresponsible.
Solo? You ever see Free Solo?
Yeah, that's freaking crazy. Like I couldn't do that. No way in hell. That's one thing that sketches me out is like there was fact where I took Chris, the kid I was talking about when I took him last year up to Vermont and New Hampshire. There's one called Artist Bluff where you hike up there. Have you ever been up there?
That's Artist Bluff is at where we were when we went up the
you hike up over the hill and then you get up on the ledge and you look up over the valley.
Cannon Mountain. Right.
Maybe.
It's in the Franconia Notch.
Yeah. So on that day, it was insanely windy, and we're up on this ledge, and you got people standing right at the edge of the ledge. No way in hell. All I could, like, because that gets my anxiety like through the roof.
I just feel so much better right now that he has a no in there somewhere.
There's a no.
Yeah, I'll like creep up like on my hands and knees.
Me too.
But you got people out there standing right there at the edge. They couldn't care.
It's our daughter.
But not me.
Yeah,
Samantha,
like
she'll just find. She was like, she's in Africa, so one of
there's
her
a ledge,
trips,
she'll find it.
Trips to South Africa, they have where the two oceans meet. And there's this thing like 1,000 feet in the air. She's sitting on the edge, like there's nothing below.
No, you'd have to have like a rope tied on me.
I can't do that.
That's all I can picture is a wind gust is going to come and knock me off this ledge, and then I've been skydiving. It's different.
Yeah, they have something.
Yeah, you have some kind of safety.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's kind of my drawing line. No, it drives me.
So the magic of recovery is amazing because it just brings these unique relationships and connections. And you were supporting CCAR early on, way before you were ever thinking about your own recovery. And Phil was very happy to receive some Bears barbecue while he hiked the Appalachian Trail. And
I still have the video of him up there in Katahdin.
Yeah. And then I end up at UConn, and you come and speak, and your restaurant is the barbecue of the University of Connecticut. So
it all comes
amazing.
Around.
It all comes around.
It's amazing how small the world is. And, I would have never when I first met you, I would have never thought that I would have needed you in your professional responsibility. And that's like one of the first things I did when I came home was, hey, I think I need your help.
Yeah.
When I got back from the rehab.
And to be clear, he called me and asked for my help, but I didn't do anything. We went on a few walks, and
that's what I needed.
I just kind of said I'd be, if I'm your safety net. If you ever need anything and need to talk about something, I would definitely be there for you anytime, any place. I think you know that.
Yeah, that's what I really like about what you guys do is recovery doesn't have, like I said, recovery has many faces, but also recovery has many paths. And that's the one thing not to talk bad about it because it does have its place, but like AA meetings. For me, AA meetings were very, very good at first. I needed it. I needed to see that. In fact, like I said, the first meeting I went into, the very first time I heard somebody speak or when they're reading out of the book, it's like, yeah, that's me. That is absolutely me. That's when I realized that, even from and what I realized is that we all have a very common mindset. In the way we process things, or like I said, trauma seems to play a very heavy role. But for me, the AA meetings, they had their place, and they got me to a place that I needed to be. And then you move on, and there's other things. There's, like I said, being outdoors. There's talking to people. There's service. There's, but for me, I think my advice to anybody that's new to recovery or even in recovery, because like I said, I've met people that have been in recovery 20, 30 years that are still struggling. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, find I wouldn't even say find a therapist, find a mode of therapy that works for you and really attack your trauma.
Well, I think
because the mode also makes it. I've been in therapy for most of my adult life, and like I said, most of the time I just bullshitted through it because I knew, and not even purposefully, but I knew what I was supposed to be saying, but it was never really effective until I found these different modes that really hit a chord with me, and it was like, and from that moment on, it was like a switch was flipped, and you realize that, hey, I didn't deserve to be treated like that when I was like a child. You know, I deserved to be loved.
Sure.
I deserve it as an adult. You know, and you know, really when you start making those really connections, I think is what's really important to long lasting and really happy recovery.
Self-awareness. It's a journey towards humility and self-awareness. And,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the gifts I've always had is my life is being self-aware, not always knowing what to do about it. But then once like I dove into recovery like you did, that was still my passion in a lot of ways. But for me, that's always going inside to figure out what makes me tick, how I'm wired, and then adjusting accordingly. And it's all good because I believe God didn't make any junk, so I'm not junk, and He has a purpose for me. So
Yeah, like I said, I think the awareness and just mindfulness around knowing the better you know yourself, the better you can navigate through this crazy world.
Accept yourself.
Accept yourself and also help yourself.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like I can now realize when I'm going down a certain path that, or if my mind's not exactly right, or if I'm feeling a little depressed, or you know, all that stuff's still there. Nothing in the world has changed since before recovery or after recovery. The biggest difference is what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
And being aware of it. You know, the depression's still there sometimes, and you know, anxiety's still there sometimes, but the thoughts, the negative thoughts, the negative self-talk.
You lay on your side and shake like an antelope. Is that what you do?
You know he's going to be doing that tonight.
Look up TRE. It is absolutely amazing.
I've heard of it, but I just
it's between that and like I said, that breath work I do a lot of, or did a lot of. I have to actually get back into it. I found that helps a lot. It was a very specific form of breath work too. Yeah. But if you would have told me before that I'd be lying on a bed doing breathing exercises, bawling like a baby because of the emotions it brings up, I would have said, crazy. No way in hell. But that and then EMDR too is another therapy mode that I really really helped me. So,
anything else you want to say?
No, just I appreciate what you've done for me, and just like you said, just being there. You know, sometimes that's all what people need is just to know that there's somebody there that has their back, that they can call upon when things get dicey, and that reminding people that you know you're not alone in the journey and your struggles and fights. That and it's something that I realized, especially with being public, like I said, is. There's a lot more people out there than you realize that are struggling with the same exact things. And if we would all just be more vocal about it, a lot of people in recovery. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And if we could just keep breaking down the stigma around addiction and mental health and all that, the quicker we could do it, the better for a lot of people. Because the more people that are out there that are just stop thinking that you're alone. I think that's the worst part about it is the isolation that's caused by mental health and addiction issues. Because then it compounds. Like I said, then before you know it, you're in the basement getting ready to kill yourself with your crazy dog.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.